The night air carried the scent of pine and something else, something that didn't belong in the forests of northern Montana. Marcus Reed stood on his clinic's back porch, coffee growing cold in his hands as he studied the strange lights dancing between the trees. After 15 years as a combat medic and another 5 running this remote clinic, he'd learned to trust his instincts. Tonight, they were screaming. The lights pulsed again, closer now. Blue-white, like lightning but wrong, too controlled, too purposeful. Marcus set his coffee down and reached for the medical bag he kept by the door. Whatever was out there, someone might need help. Old habits died hard. He was halfway down the path when the first explosion lit up the night. The shock wave hit him like a wall, sending him stumbling backward. Through the ringing in his ears, he heard something else, a cry of pain that didn't sound human. Marcus ran toward the sound, his training taking over. The forest opened into a small clearing, and there he found her. She was humanoid but clearly not human, her skin had a faint luminescence, and her eyes reflected the starlight like mirrors. She was wounded, clutching her side where a strange energy seemed to pulse beneath her skin. "Stay back," she warned, her voice carrying harmonics that made his teeth ache. "They're coming." "You're hurt," Marcus said, taking another step forward. "I'm a doctor. Let me help." She laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "You cannot help me, Marcus Reed. Not with your primitive medicine." The fact that she knew his name should have terrified him. Instead, it only strengthened his resolve. "Try me." Another explosion rocked the forest, closer this time. The alien woman, if that's what she was, tried to stand and failed. Marcus closed the distance between them, medical training overriding common sense. Her wound was unlike anything he'd seen before, it seemed to shift and change as he watched, energy crackling beneath her translucent skin. "They are called the Archons," she said through gritted teeth. "They hunt me because I carry something they fear. Something that could change everything." She reached out, her fingers brushing his forehead. "Your kind has such potential, locked away in your primitive DNA. We were meant to guide you, not hold you back." "Hold still," Marcus said, pulling supplies from his bag. "Whatever's going on, you need medical attention first." "No time," she gasped. "They're here. I am Lyra, and I'm about to give you a choice, Marcus Reed. Help me, and I will give you power beyond your comprehension. Refuse, and we both die tonight." The forest went silent. The kind of silence that comes before violence. Marcus could feel them now, presences moving through the trees, carrying that same strange energy he'd seen in the lights. His hand stayed steady as he worked on Lyra's wound, even as his mind raced through the implications of what was happening. "Why me?" he asked, buying time as he applied pressure to the injury. "Because you still run toward the sound of suffering," Lyra said. "Because you remember what it means to save lives under fire. Because your heart," she stopped, pain contorting her features. "They're here." 3 figures emerged from the darkness. They wore armor that seemed to bend light around it, carrying weapons that hummed with barely contained power. Their faces were hidden behind masks that reflected the starlight like black mirrors. "Step away from the fugitive," one of them commanded. Their voice carried the same strange harmonics as Lyra's. Marcus stood slowly, positioning himself between the newcomers and his patient. "She's injured. I'm a doctor. I'm not going anywhere. This does not concern you, human. The knowledge she carries is forbidden. Step aside, or we will remove you." Marcus had heard threats like that before, in other places, from other kinds of soldiers. He'd learned long ago that sometimes the only choice was no choice at all. "I took an oath," he said simply. "Do what you have to do." Lyra's hand caught his ankle. Energy surged through him, hot and cold at once, like lightning in his veins. The world shifted, colors becoming brighter, sounds sharper. He could feel everything, the wind in the trees, the heartbeats of the archons, the very pulse of the earth beneath his feet. "I'm sorry," Lyra whispered. "But you've made your choice." The first archon raised their weapon. Marcus felt the energy building before he saw it, felt it in a way that should have been impossible. Without thinking, he moved. The world seemed to slow around him as he dodged the blast, his body responding with impossible speed and precision. "Impossible," one of the archons breathed. The transfer should have killed him. Marcus didn't understand what was happening to him, but he understood combat. He understood protecting patience. Everything else could wait. The night exploded into chaos. Energy weapons fired, trees splintered, and Marcus moved like he never had before. Every step, every dodge felt natural, as if he'd been born for this moment. He could sense the patterns of the Archon's attacks before they happened, could feel the flow of power through their weapons. Behind him, Lyra worked frantically with something small and glowing. "Hold them off," she called. "Just a few more moments." Marcus didn't reply. He was too busy staying alive, too busy protecting her. His new abilities sang through his blood like electricity, like life itself. Part of him wondered if he was dying, if this was all some elaborate hallucination. The rest of him was too focused on survival to care. The night was far from over, and Marcus Reed's world was about to change forever. Dawn broke over the Montana wilderness, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Marcus sat in his clinic's examination room, staring at his hands. They looked normal enough, the same calluses, the same old scar across his right palm from a careless moment in med school. But they felt different. Everything felt different. Lyra stood by the window, her wound now sealed with what looked like liquid starlight. She'd been quiet for the past hour, watching him with those mirror-bright eyes as he tried to process what had happened in the forest. "The changes will stabilize soon," she said finally. "Your neural pathways are still adapting to the enhancement." Marcus flexed his fingers, watching as faint traces of energy rippled beneath his skin. "What exactly did you do to me?" "I gave you what your species was meant to have millennia ago." Lyra turned from the window. "We were supposed to be guides, helping humanity reach its full potential. Instead, the Archons decided you were too dangerous to evolve." Marcus stood, pacing the small room. His movements felt too fluid, too precise, like his body was operating on a different frequency than before. "And what exactly is our full potential?" Instead of answering, Lyra picked up a scalpel from his medical tray. Before he could stop her, she drew it across her palm. Blood welled up, not red, but something closer to liquid platinum. "Heal it," she said, extending her hand. "I don't." "You can feel it, can't you? The energy in everything around you. The patterns of life itself. That's what the enhancement does, it lets you see and manipulate those patterns." She was right. Since the moment she'd changed him, Marcus had been aware of everything. The electrical impulses in the clinic's wiring. The complex biochemistry of the potted plant by his desk. The intricate dance of cells and energy in Lyra's wounded hand. Almost without thinking, he reached out. The world seemed to shift around him, reality becoming more fluid, more malleable. He could see the damage in Lyra's hand at a molecular level, could feel how it wanted to heal. All he had to do was guide it. Energy flowed from his fingers, matching the strange patterns of Lyra's biology. The wound sealed itself, leaving nothing but unblemished skin behind. "Holy shit," Marcus whispered. "That's just the beginning." Lyra's voice held a note of pride. "The enhancement doesn't just heal. It lets you understand and manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. Given time and practice, you could." A sound like thunder rolled across the sky. Marcus felt it in his bones, felt the wrongness of it. "They're back." "Yes." Lyra moved to the center of the room. "The Archons won't stop. They can't allow this knowledge to spread. Even now, they're preparing to sterilize this entire area. Sterilize? Marcus felt sick. You mean they'll kill everyone in town? There are over 3,000 people here. Unless we stop them. Lyra's eyes met his. This is why I chose you, Marcus. Not just because you were willing to help me, but because you understand what it means to protect others. The power I gave you, it's not just a gift. It's a responsibility. More thunder, closer now. Through his enhanced senses, Marcus could feel the buildup of energy in the atmosphere. Whatever the Archons were planning, it was big. How long do we have? Minutes. Maybe less. Lyra pulled something from her clothing, a small crystal that pulsed with inner light. This contains everything, the truth about your species, about the Archons, about what humanity could become. If anything happens to me, you must. The clinic's windows exploded inward. Marcus moved without thinking, throwing up his hands. Energy surged through him, forming a barrier that deflected the worst of the blast. Glass tinkled against the floor as a figure stepped through the ruined window. This Archon was different from the others, taller, its armor more elaborate. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that made Marcus's newly enhanced senses scream in warning. Lyra, daughter of the first house, you stand accused of violating the Prime Directive. Surrender now, and your death will be quick. Always so dramatic, Nexus. Lyra's voice dripped contempt. Still following orders without questioning them. Still pretending we're protecting the galaxy when all we're doing is ensuring our own supremacy. The Archon, Nexus, raised a hand. Energy gathered around it like a miniature sun. You gave forbidden knowledge to a primitive species. The penalty is death, for you and the human. Marcus felt power building in his own body, responding to the threat. 3,000 innocent people in this town. You really willing to kill them all just to keep your secrets? Innocent? Nexus laughed. Your species wages constant war. You destroy your own planet. You. We learn, Marcus cut in. We grow. We help each other. Yeah, we make mistakes, but we keep trying to be better. Maybe that's what really scares you. Nexus fired. Marcus moved, faster than he ever thought possible. The energy blast passed through where he'd been standing, melting his examination table into slag. He rolled, came up next to Lyra, and felt her press the crystal into his hand. Run, she whispered. I'll hold them off. The crystal will show you what to do next. I'm not leaving you. You have to. Her eyes met his. Sometimes the only way to save everyone is to retreat, heal, and come back stronger. You know this, Marcus. You learned it in combat. She was right, damn her. Sometimes victory meant living to fight another day. But that didn't make it any easier. More Archons were appearing at the windows. Energy crackled through the air, making Marcus's enhanced senses sing with warning. Lyra pushed him toward the back door. Go. Find others like you, people with the strength to bear this gift. Build an army. When the time comes, I'll find you. Marcus ran. Behind him, light and power erupted as Lyra engaged the Archons. The crystal pulsed in his hand, showing him paths through reality he never knew existed. He had a feeling his life was about to become very complicated. But first, he had a town to evacuate. Because no matter what powers he now possessed, some things hadn't changed. He was still a doctor. Still a protector. And he had work to do. The evacuation was going better than Marcus expected. People trusted him here, the doctor who delivered their babies, set their broken bones, and kept their secrets. When he said there was a chemical spill heading toward town, they listened. The crystal in his pocket pulsed with each lie, as if judging him. From his vantage point on Miller's Hill, he could see the convoy of cars and trucks streaming south toward Helena. His enhanced senses let him feel the life force of every person, a river of consciousness flowing away from danger. Behind him, the clash between Lyra and the Archons had turned the sky above his clinic into an aurora of impossible colors. Dr. Reed? He turned to find Jenny Torres, one of his nurses, standing behind him. She held her medical bag like a shield, dark eyes worried but determined. "I'm not leaving. Whatever's really happening, you might need help." Marcus started to protest, then stopped. With his enhanced perception, he could see something different about Jenny, a complexity to her life energy that reminded him of his own. Lyra had said to find others who could bear the gift. Maybe he already had. "It's not a chemical spill," he said finally. "And after I tell you the truth, you might wish you'd left with the others." He explained everything, the encounter with Lyra, the enhancement, the Archons. As he spoke, he felt the crystal resonate, confirming his instincts about Jenny. She took it all in with the same steady calm she showed during emergencies at the clinic. "Show me," she said when he finished. Before Marcus could respond, reality rippled around them. 3 Archons materialized from thin air, their armor scorched and cracked from battle. The female escaped, one reported, weapon trained on Marcus. "But the human will tell us where she went." Marcus stepped in front of Jenny, energy gathering in his hands. "Yeah, that's not happening." The lead Archon fired. Marcus threw up a barrier of pure force, deflecting the blast. The energy felt different now, more controlled, more natural. He was learning fast. "Jenny, run. Not a chance, document." The Archons spread out, trying to flank them. Marcus felt their attack patterns before they moved, his enhanced senses turning combat into a deadly dance. He blocked another blast, redirected a third, all while keeping himself between the attackers and Jenny. But he was still new to these powers. Still learning. A blast got through, catching him in the shoulder. Pain exploded through him, but his enhanced body was already healing, knitting flesh and bone back together. Enough. The lead Archon's weapon began to pulse with gathering power. "You cannot hope to." Something unexpected happened. Jenny, who had been silent behind Marcus, suddenly moved. Her hands shot out, and the very air seemed to crystallize around the nearest Archon, trapping it in a lattice of frozen time and space. Marcus stared at her. "How did you?" "I don't know." Jenny's voice was panicked but her hands stayed steady. "I just felt how it should work." The remaining Archons fell back, reassessing. Marcus didn't waste the opportunity. He reached for Jenny with his enhanced senses, feeling the same patterns Lyra had awakened in him beginning to stir in her. The crystal in his pocket burned. "The gift spreads," one Archon hissed. "Protocol 7 is now authorized." Marcus didn't know what Protocol 7 was, but he could feel the change in the energy around them. The air itself seemed to become heavier, charged with potential. "Jenny." He grabbed her arm. "We need to move. Now." They ran. Behind them, reality began to warp and tear as the Archons unleashed their full power. Trees twisted into impossible shapes. The ground rippled like water. Marcus felt the fabric of spacetime starting to unravel. "They're going to destroy everything," Jenny gasped as they ran. "The whole valley." "Not if we stop them." Marcus pulled out the crystal. It was glowing brighter now, resonating with both their enhanced energies. Lyra said this would show us what to do next. They skidded to a stop at the edge of a cliff overlooking the valley. The distortion was spreading, turning the world into a surreal nightmare of twisted physics and broken reality. The crystal pulsed in time with their heartbeats. "I can feel it," Jenny whispered. "Like it's trying to teach us something." Marcus nodded. The crystal's energy was flowing into them, showing them patterns within patterns, the deep structure of reality itself. He saw how the Archon's power worked, and how to counter it. Together, he said, holding out his hand. Jenny took it without hesitation. Power surged between them, amplified by their connection. The crystal's light became blinding. Stop them, a voice whispered in their minds. Lyra's voice. Show them why humanity was meant to evolve. Marcus and Jenny raised their free hands. Energy poured from them in waves, meeting the Archon's reality-warping power head-on. For a moment, the valley seemed to hold its breath. Then everything changed. The distortions began to recede. Reality snapped back into place like a rubber band. Marcus felt the Archon's surprise, and their fear. Impossible, one of them said. The gift. It's evolving faster than predicted. Fall back, another ordered. We need to report this. They vanished, leaving behind a valley that bore scars of their power but was largely intact. Marcus sagged, exhausted but alive. Jenny caught him before he could fall. That, she said, was either the coolest or the scariest thing I've ever done. Maybe both. Marcus laughed weakly. Welcome to the club. He looked at the crystal, still glowing softly. Something tells me we're just getting started. What do we do now? We find others, Marcus said. People who can handle the gift. People who'll use it to protect rather than destroy. He paused. And then we find Lyra. The crystal pulsed once, like a heartbeat of agreement. Above them, the sky began to clear, revealing stars that suddenly seemed much closer than before. 3 days after the battle in the valley, Marcus and Jenny sat in the basement of an abandoned ranger station, watching the crystal project images into the air. The story it told was both beautiful and terrifying. Millions of years ago, Lyra's recorded voice explained, we discovered Earth. Your species was young, barely beginning to grasp tools and fire. We saw such potential in you, the capacity for both creation and destruction, for great love and terrible violence. You were unique among all the species we'd encountered. The hologram showed ancient humans, watched by beings of light and energy. Marcus felt Jenny tense beside him as they recognized the ancestors of the Archons. Some of us wanted to guide you, to help you reach your full potential. Others feared what you might become. The debate raged for millennia, until finally, the Archons seized control. They decided humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to evolve naturally. The images shifted, showing strange machines in orbit around Earth, dampening something, some energy that should have flowed freely through human bodies and minds. They've been suppressing us, Jenny whispered. All this time. The enhancement I gave you, Lyra's voice continued, is not some foreign power. It is your birthright, the unlocking of abilities that should have developed naturally over thousands of generations. But the Archon's interference stunted your evolution, trapped you in a biological prison. Marcus looked at his hands, watching energy ripple beneath his skin. So everything we can do now is what humanity was meant to become. The hologram shifted again, showing possible futures, humans working alongside advanced aliens, exploring the cosmos, healing worlds. But the Archons fear this future. They fear any species that might rival their power. Why tell us this now? Jenny asked the recording. Why risk everything to help us? The hologram flickered, and Lyra's image appeared before them, looking tired but determined. Because the Archon's control is slipping. More humans are being born who can resist their suppression. They plan to sterilize your entire planet rather than risk your evolution. Marcus felt cold. The whole planet? How long do we have? Months, perhaps. They are gathering their forces, preparing for a final solution. Lyra's image looked directly at them. But there is hope. The gift, once given, spreads exponentially. Each enhanced human becomes a key, unlocking the potential in others. You must find them, the ones whose minds and spirits are ready. Build an army before it's too late. The hologram died, leaving them in darkness. Outside, rain pattered against the ranger station's roof. Marcus could feel every drop, could sense the complex patterns of weather and energy that created them. We need help, Jenny said finally. Even with these powers, we can't search the whole country for potential candidates. Marcus nodded, then paused. An idea was forming. Maybe we don't have to. He pulled out his phone, still working despite everything that had happened. I still have access to the hospital's medical records. Blood work, genetic markers, stress tests. Jenny caught on immediately. Looking for people whose bodies and minds might be ready for the enhancement. People like us. Exactly. Marcus started typing. I treated a firefighter last year, Dave Chen. His cellular regeneration rates were off the charts. And there's Maria Valdez, the physics professor who survived that lab accident. Her brainwave patterns were unlike anything I'd ever seen. We'd be violating about a dozen privacy laws. To save the world. Marcus looked up at her. Does that make us the bad guys? Jenny laughed, but there was an edge to it. Pretty sure that line got crossed when we started shooting energy beams and bending reality. They worked through the night, compiling lists, cross-referencing data. The crystal pulsed occasionally, seeming to confirm or reject certain names. By dawn, they had identified 12 potential candidates within a 100-mile radius. Now comes the hard part, Marcus said, looking at their list. Convincing them we're not crazy. Shouldn't be too hard. Jenny held up her hand, letting energy dance between her fingers. We've got some pretty convincing evidence. A sound like breaking glass shattered the pre-dawn quiet. Marcus felt the disturbance before he saw it, a ripple in reality, spreading out from the nearby town. They're back. He grabbed the crystal, stuffing it into his pocket. And they're not alone. Through his enhanced senses, he could feel dozens of Archon signatures. Not a strike team this time, an invasion force. And they were heading straight for the town they'd evacuated days ago. They're looking for us, Jenny said, her voice tight. All those people we sent away, they'll be coming back soon. Coming home. Marcus nodded grimly. Then we better make sure there's a home to come back to. He looked at their list of potential recruits. But first, we make a few phone calls. Time to see who else wants to join the evolution. The crystal pulsed against his chest like a second heartbeat. Somewhere out there, Lyra was fighting her own battles. But this one, protecting their home, their people, their future, this one was theirs. Dawn broke over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of fire. Marcus and Jenny stepped out of the ranger station, power flowing through their enhanced bodies. The world felt different now, bigger, stranger, full of both danger and possibility. Ready? Marcus asked. Jenny smiled, energy crackling around her hands. Born ready, document. Let's go save the world. The Montana sunrise painted the valley in gold, but Marcus barely noticed its beauty. He was too focused on the dozen people gathered around him in the old barn, each of them crackling with newly awakened power. Dave Chen, the firefighter, practiced creating shields of pure energy. Maria Valdez, the physics professor, was already theorizing ways to manipulate spacetime itself. Others were discovering their own unique manifestations of the enhancement. They're coming, Jenny announced from her position by the window. At least 30 Archon ships, moving into position around the valley. Marcus touched the crystal hanging from his neck. It had grown brighter with each new person they'd enhanced, as if drawing strength from their combined potential. Everyone remember the plan? Defend the town, protect the civilians, try not to die, Dave said with a grim smile. Simple enough. And hope Lyra was right about this working, Maria added, adjusting her glasses. Through his enhanced senses, Marcus could see the complex equations flowing through her mind, calculating possibilities. The ground trembled as the first Archon ship descended. It was massive, a construct of light and impossibly smooth metal that hurt the eyes to look at directly. Marcus felt the others tense, their newly awakened powers responding to the threat. "Remember," he said, "they've been doing this for millennia. We've had days. But we have something they don't." "What's that?" someone asked. "Nothing to lose." Marcus stepped forward, energy flowing through him like a river. "And everything to protect." The ship's hull split open, disgorging dozens of Archons. At their head stood Nexus, his armor now bearing symbols of even higher rank. "This is your final warning," Nexus's voice boomed across the valley. "Surrender the crystal and submit to termination. Resist, and we will cleanse this entire region." Marcus stepped out of the barn, his team spreading out behind him. "Funny thing about humans," he called back. "We don't do well with ultimatums. Then you will witness the price of defiance." Nexus raised his hand. The air itself seemed to catch fire. Reality buckled as the Archons unleashed their full power. But this time, Marcus and his team were ready. Dave threw up shields of crystallized energy, protecting the town's perimeter. Maria's calculations let her predict and counter the Archon's reality-warping attacks. Jenny moved like lightning, turning the enemy's power back on themselves. And Marcus. Marcus finally understood what Lyra had seen in humanity. As the battle raged, he felt it, the connection between all enhanced humans, growing stronger with each passing moment. Their powers weren't just individual abilities, they were parts of a greater whole. The crystal pulsed in time with their shared heartbeats. "The gift spreads," he whispered, remembering Lyra's words. Then he understood. "Everyone," he shouted. "Link up. Connect your powers." They did, instinctively forming a circle. Energy flowed between them, amplifying, transforming. The crystal lifted from Marcus's chest, floating in the center of their formation. Nexus saw what was happening. "Stop them. The convergence cannot be allowed." But it was too late. Light exploded outward from the crystal, washing over the valley in a wave of pure potential. Where it touched the earth, plants grew with impossible speed. Where it met the air, reality itself seemed to sing. And when it reached the townspeople returning to their homes, the ones they'd been fighting to protect, something miraculous happened. The enhancement spread, awakening the dormant potential in every human it touched. Marcus felt thousands of minds suddenly blazing with new awareness, new power. The Archons fell back, their weapons useless against the tide of awakening humanity. Nexus stared in horror as his soldiers retreated. "What have you done?" "Exactly what you feared." Lyra's voice rang out as she materialized beside Marcus, her wounds healed, her power restored. "We gave them back their birthright. The crystal shattered, its purpose fulfilled. But its energy lived on in every enhanced human, spreading out across the world in an unstoppable wave. This changes nothing," Nexus snarled. "We will return with greater forces." "We will." "No." Marcus stepped forward, power flowing through him like sunlight. "You won't. Because now we can see you. Now we can fight back. And we're not alone anymore." As if in response, the sky lit up with new arrivals, ships similar to the Archons, but piloted by beings who glowed with familiar energy. Lyra's allies, arriving at last. "The age of suppression is over," Lyra announced. "Humanity will take its place among the stars, as they were always meant to." Nexus and his remaining forces retreated, their ships vanishing into the impossible geometries of higher space. But Marcus barely noticed their departure. He was too focused on the changes rippling through the world around him. In the town below, people were discovering their new abilities, reaching out to each other with wonder and joy rather than fear. Children floated leaves in the air, their laughter carrying on the wind. Adults helped each other understand their awakening powers, forming spontaneous teaching circles. What happens now? Jenny asked, joining him as they watched their world transform. Marcus looked at Lyra, who smiled. Now, she said, you become what you were always meant to be. Teachers, healers, explorers. The next step in human evolution. And the Archons? Will return, Lyra admitted. But by then, you'll be ready. You'll have made this power your own, in ways even we never imagined. Marcus watched the sun rise over a changed world. The air thrummed with possibility, with potential finally unleashed. Humanity's next great adventure was just beginning. And he couldn't wait to see what came next.